Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today I am joined by my friends and colleagues to break down your horoscopes for the month of October. We're going to be looking at the Grand Water Trine that's coming later in October as the focus of our horoscopes today. We'll tell you when that's going to happen, what it's all about, what it means, sort of broadly speaking, and then we'll break down your horoscope sign by sign with the team. I'm really excited for this today. It's really the last major astrological configuration of the year, and it comes in waves. We have several sets of these Grand Water Trines, so we'll sort of take a look at that today, since we will probably be revisiting this on the channel in a number of different episodes between now and the end of the year. Anyway, so that is our agenda for today. Before we dive in, remember to like and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so that you know when new episodes drop. That's really the only way that people are regularly notified, if they're subscribed to the channel, that something new is happening on the channel. It really does help us grow what we're doing as well. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on our website, nightlightastrology.com. That is not nightlife. It's not a dance club. It's called Nightlight Astrology. And I'm Adam Elenbaas, not Alan. Those are like every single week, there's at least 10 people who call it Nightlife and call me Alan. So there's an alternative place where I own a dance club. My owner's name is Alan. All right. Anyway, you can find on the website right here. If you go to events, click on the immersive retreat, you'll see that we are coming up on the final week of the early bird rate for our retreat to Mexico next June. So be sure you take advantage of that. We have, I think, around 20 to 25 spots left available for this retreat. So coming down to our cap, but we'll hope to see you there. You can still take advantage of the early bird rate for a little bit longer. I think it's good through, let's see, go down to the bottom. Early bird rate, when does it go until? Sorry, guys. October 1st. So that's like now. Okay, sorry. Let's go back up to the top of the screen. Click on courses. Go to first year course. All of the hosts that you're seeing today have been through our first year program, and maybe they can help me plug it as we go along today. But at the end of today's video, you'll see an informational talk on the course that's tagged on at the end that will tell you everything about it. You can find that video right here on the page as well. This is our first year course in ancient Hellenistic astrology. It begins again on November 8th. The early bird rate is good all the way up until October 24th. You can save on the cost of the course. There's also need-based tuition assistance. So if you're someone who's on a fixed or limited income, you need a little help to make the program happen, please take advantage of that. This is a fantastic course in ancient Hellenistic astrology. It's also a course that builds meaningful bridges between ancient and modern forms of astrology. So really fantastic program. Can't wait to start with the new group here coming up soon. So at the end, you'll learn more about that today. Okay, well, on that note, let us bring all of our co-hosts back. Kelsey, Q, Emily, Mal. Hey, welcome back.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, we're eclipse season is, as we're recording this, we've just moved through our second eclipse, the solar eclipse. How have you all been doing?
We're here.
Yeah, that's it. Hanging in.
Yeah.
We actually did a little chat all together. We did a Zoom call last week, and it was so nice for an eclipse season grounding ritual, just connecting with one another. So that was awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it was my daughter, my 7-year-old, we were in the car coming back from a family event on the day of the solar eclipse. And she said, "Dad, what does an eclipse mean?" And I was really impressed that my 7-year-old asked. So then I was like, I pulled off to the side of the road. I got out of the car. No, I'm just kidding. So I was like, well, we're having astrology class right now. No, I said, so I explained to her that, there's alternations of light and dark and of opposites in life. We talked about feeling sad and feeling happy, of feeling good and feeling a little naughty, of daytime and nighttime, and talked about opposites with her. And then I said, sometimes the play of opposites in life gets louder. and bigger. And we really, really feel it and see it and notice it. And eclipses are like that. It was a pretty simple way to explain it to a 7-year-old, but she really got it. And the first eclipse the lunar eclipse was on her moon in Pisces. It landed like right on it. And, several weeks beforehand, I was talking about this in terms of like, how do you explain astrology to skeptics? And I was saying, well, the predictive capacity that astrology has is rooted in omens and symbols, themes, topics, and timelines, but it's not as mechanistic and specifically predictive as people think it is and try to test it as. So I could say, well, this eclipse is likely to have a pretty significant impact on my daughter compared to any of our other charts in the family. And on that day, during the literal hour of the eclipse on her moon, she had just gotten a pet bunny for her birthday, and it died. Right? And so she's having her first really big processing of loss and grief, and like, so from the outside, a skeptic looks and says, well, you didn't predict that the bunny died, and so astrology fails. That's the kind of testing is typically done. Well, if you don't predict the bunny's death, then astrology isn't real. No, but I knew that of all of our family members, the eclipse was likely to affect her most significantly in a way, given the moon, that could coincide with a variety of topics. But one of them might be a really difficult emotional event. And so that's the kind of archetypal consistency that astrology works with. The first eclipse, obviously, we saw some interesting public attacks on astrology. So I've been thinking a lot about how do you demonstrate astrology for people? You have to give them an experience, that you have to have an experience of the signs and symbols coming to life somehow. And my daughter, who I had talked with about the fact that the eclipse would have an impact on her, has been really thinking about it now. It's at 7. And this is why she was also asking me, like, what are eclipses? Like, because she just had one, she knew it was going to have an impact on her. Her bunny died. She's 7. Well, what is the nature of these things? And it doesn't take a complex explanation. It's a super simple explanation that imparts it, even to a child. But anyway, as we're now coming out of these cycles where the interplay of light and dark is especially intense, it's interesting to me that we're moving into the time of a Grand Water Trine, where at the end of October, our big transit for the month is going to be this configuration of many planets getting together in trines through all of the water signs. And on my channel, I've talked about this a little bit already, but one of the things that tends to happen with water alchemically is in alchemy, it was associated with a stage in the alchemical process called solutio. And this alchemical stage of transformation typically occurs when boundaries and things that are hard get soft, and they open, they become more porous. Just like if you take, clay or something, you put it in water, it gets mushy. And the eclipse that we just had was in an earth sign, right? And so then following up the rest of the year with several big Grand Water Trines, the opportunity for us to soften perspectives, soften hard edges, structures and boundaries becoming more porous, that is thought to be a very creative part of the alchemical process, because it's only when things get soft that they can be reshaped or reformed in some way. Like clay, when it becomes wet, well, you can reshape it. You can move it into a different structure that then solidifies again after the water clears. That's one way of thinking about it. Also, the processing of emotions, grief, things that, especially with so much water, that sometimes can flood us or be very overwhelming emotionally or physically. So those are a few of the things that come to my mind, but I'll give the timeline and everything like that, and then we'll get into the horoscopes. But before I do that, I'd love to hear just any thoughts from you guys about a Grand Water Trine coming in the wake of the eclipses, just whatever other thoughts we might add to this before we get into the horoscopes.
Well, I was thinking a lot about the water trine just with the water element. I have all the water in my chart. So remembering and feeling and crying to music, but not to be sad, not to go to a dark place. It's to go to the happiest place for me, which is feeling emotionally resonant with myself. And I think that this Grand Water Trine will definitely help a lot of us who are needing that forgiveness, that compassion, whether it's for yourself, for someone else, for the whole world right now, to really feel into what we remember about love and what we remember about being human. So I'm looking forward to moving through that with everyone. And I also, I think about how we've had Saturn in Pisces, but it was ruled by Jupiter and Gemini. And so that was a little challenging, but it helped us grow. It helped us grow. And now Jupiter is in Cancer, and I just feel that this is kind of like a coming home moment where we get to come home to ourselves, to our boundaries, to maybe even going all the way back to the Great Conjunction in 2020 and seeing how that seed is starting to take off, and remembering the subtle promise we made to ourselves back then, and how now it might be a little more tangible, a little more possible, and that belief. I'm all about you got to believe it to see it, not the other way around.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I like that a lot, Kelsey. I was kind of thinking about those similar themes in the life of a famous native with this trine. Kurt Cobain had Saturn in Pisces, Jupiter in Cancer, and Mars in Scorpio. He also had a ton of other things in water, so it wasn't just those three planets. But I'm thinking about how his lifetime really personified this theme of a grand trine in water, this intense creative force. He basically, brought the genre of grunge. Like, could you think of a more emotional genre than grunge? And then he brings this to like kind of like it makes it popular, right? But then in his own life, he really struggles with these themes of like a really intense empathy for not only the people he knows, but just the collective. He struggles with the relationship between himself and his fans, and even his interpersonal relationships in the romantic realm. So, again, I think he personifies both the highest and the more challenging parts of a grand trine that have to do with maybe enmeshment and maybe even destructive ways of attempting to move through our emotions.
Right. There's some elements of codependency and loss of boundaries and drug addiction and like losing himself in the overwhelm of those powerful feeling states. But as you said, there's also this ability to channel some pretty deep and raw emotions that were present collectively, and great artists that do that are often iconic because they just capture the zeitgeist and it comes through their art. And yeah, like certainly he was able to do that, and the feelings of angst and disappointment and frustration especially, and emptiness and depressiveness, that this world is not, it can be a very disappointing place. And there's something really real about that, I mean, even all of the great mystical traditions tell us that you can't really advance spiritually until you come to terms with that. So he certainly allowed a lot of people to come to terms with that through art. That's a really great example, Mal. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, that kind of, excuse me, leads into the way that I've been thinking about this a little bit, is that this is kind of a complicated cast of characters, right? We've got a little bit of a melancholic yet wise Saturn in Pisces. We've got a romantic and like very longing but a little bit delulu Neptune in Pisces, right? We've got a really strong, finally having some dignity Mars in Scorpio, but maybe he's like, I'm ready to be a little vindictive. I've been in the muck, right, for almost a year. And then we've got a sharp-tongued Mercury in Scorpio, right, for this month. And then, of course, in November, we've got Sun and Venus coming through too. So in order to kind of simplify this scene on the stage for me, I have been looking at that Saturn and Neptune piece in Pisces as that collective disappointment, Mal, that you were talking about, and Adam. And there's like this unfulfilled longing there. But as Kelsey said, with Jupiter now in Cancer ruling that, it's time for maybe integration and acceptance of whatever this disappointment has been. And then that Jupiter in Cancer is where we can kind of lean into the healing, the remembering, the nostalgia, but in a very emotionally tender way. And then the Mars and Mercury coming through in Scorpio, to use a couple of really overused words, is kind of like the trigger or the activator of however this storyline is playing out on the stage of our lives, that something in that Scorpio sector is inciting a process of flow around these three places and three themes in our lives right now. So I'm looking at it.
Love
Nice.
that.
Yeah, definitely rolling off of everything that you all have kind of put into this discussion around all that this like Grand Trine will encompass over the last bits of this year. I was really looking at like Jupiter creating a very just like safe, comfortable, soft, more graceful period, or just like umbrella energy for us to be working within as we encounter, the harsher planets and some of their more challenging experiences that they will bring up, in energies that we will have wash over us and flood over us as this Grand Trine continues to unravel. New understandings, new developmental boundaries, because we did talk about like the porousness of this energy, the enmeshment that can happen, the overwhelm that we might be experiencing. But starting with Jupiter in Cancer, just building a sanctuary, a home within self, wherever we go, wherever we find ourselves, in whatever experiences we're in. If we have this like secure sense of home to work within, that will hopefully align with Mars in its home sign of Scorpio, where you have this very emotional alignment to action. So there's not this misalignment that Mars has been experiencing. It's completely aligned emotionally and like willpower. They're together. So your action within your home is aligned, purposeful. You're moving forward. Mercury being in Scorpio is going to provide clarity around some of the things that it's going to be uncomfortable, potentially emotionally draining, or emotional real cutting, severing of philosophies, ideas, dreams, just the way that you were really understanding your situation or the situations around you could drastically be changing. But if you have that Jupiter foundation of home to work within, there's some comfort, there's some safety to continue on. Then bringing in the Pisces energy, of course, I think that there's this level of faith that you'll have to move in, because now the work that you've been doing with Mars and Mercury, that aligned emotional work that you've been putting forward, you get to allow the collective to kind of see how they respond to it, and then how you respond to how they respond to the work that you're doing. right? And so I think that it falls back, because you might find that, wow, what I've been doing, even though it feels quite aligned for me, I'm not getting a great response from those that I'm in community with, or the projects that I'm working on, they're not going anywhere. They're not as successful as I was hoping for them to be. Now that I feel more aligned, what do I need to tweak? What does Saturn need to restructure for me? And where do I need to dream or be a little delusional, you know what I'm saying, about certain things with Neptune there as well? And then you can go back to like, well, I have a home. Just because I'm getting the feedback in a particular way doesn't necessarily mean I need to dismantle the home, you know what I'm saying? Or that the home is not safe, or this sanctuary for me to continue doing the work that I need to do, so that I'm aligned, soul, spirit, mental, emotional, holistically. Am I showing up as myself? So I'm just looking at these energies, because like you said, Emily, there's a lot of players, and just like generally what energy could be supportive for the collective, but then also like our individual rising signs that we're covering today. It's an exciting time, but it is, like Adam said, just like an overflow, like a flooding of water and emotions and experiences and memories that will be created, but also like brought back up, and will set us into a motion of initiation and action. So that's kind of where I've been with trying to wrap my mind around all of these moving parts for the rest of this year.
Absolutely. On that note, let us shift our attention to the real-time clock, and let's get the timeline. I'm really marking this as a starting point on around October 23rd, where things really start to pop. The reason for that is that the moon will trigger the start of this Grand Water Trine on October 23rd while it's in Scorpio. But you can see here it's Mars and Mercury coming together in Scorpio that last 10 days or so of October, that then connects Mercury and Mars as the fast-moving planets to the slower-moving planets, Jupiter in Cancer first, and then Saturn and Neptune in order. Now, this is not an exact Grand Water Trine in the sense that all planets are exactly at the precisely the same degrees by trine, but it's close enough. When trines like this are happening, it's like it pours, it lightens up a bit, it pours again within an hour and a half of your afternoon. No one says that it wasn't raining. So that's a simple way of thinking about what's happening here. But this Grand Water Trine will then perfect October 24th with Mercury and Jupiter. Then on the 25th, Mercury starts getting in with Saturn. And then by the 27th, we've got Mars coming through the trine with Jupiter. And then by the 29th or so, we've got Mars coming into the trine with Saturn. So it just keeps going like that. Mars perfecting its last trine to Neptune by about November 3rd. So you take last 10 days of October into the first couple of November, and that whole range of time is just covered in water. You get moon in Pisces, by the way. First couple, like Halloween through the first couple days of November will really amplify the watery signature again, just like the moon in Scorpio does. Now, just to stretch this out a little bit so that everyone can see how the event continues, I want to show you that if you go forward just a little bit, you're going to get the sun rolling through the Grand Water Trine in about mid-November. And then that's followed by Venus and Mercury retrograde coming back into late Scorpio by late November. And that doesn't finally clear with Mercury turning direct and going once more through the Grand Water Trine by early December. So it's just water, water, water all the way through from late October through early December. Like that is the dominant astrological theme for the end of the year. So just worth us all sort of paying attention to. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to back this up so that we get the moon in here. I'm going to take out the sun and Venus just since they're not in the configuration at the end of October. We're going to focus your chart looking the way that it does on the screen. And we're going to go through Aries through Pisces in order. And so let me just get one thing. And I will, by the way, for all of our hosts, I'm going to tell you, if you want to connect with any of these lovely ladies after, you can. I'll tell you how to connect with them at the end. Mal's taking fire signs today. Emily, earth. Q, air. Kelsey, water. So we will go in that order. And I have a sore throat, so my commentary is going to be a little minimal. I'll add something in if something's just burning and come into mind. I'll say something. Otherwise, I'm going to let our panelists talk more today to preserve my throat, because I have to record more content today still. So I'm trying to kind of preserve my energy. But okay, on that note, Mal, take us away with Aries rising. And what I'm going to do, just so everyone can see this, I'm going to connect the houses, and just briefly I'll mention, okay, you've got the Grand Water Trine happening in houses 12, 8, and 4. And I'll say it like that for each one and then hand it over. So that's you, Mel. 12, 8, and 4 for Aries risings. What do you think?
Definitely nothing heavy, nothing too serious for the fire risings. But actually, the fire risings have the Grand Trine in the spooky houses, or the houses that have a lot to do with maybe resolution of karmic contracts, more intangible, like psychological challenges, or even challenges when it comes to our soul, and fighting our fears and moving forward despite our fears. And specifically for the Aries risings, Saturn has been hanging out in the 12th house of what is unseen. That's been for a couple years now, since March 2023. And now this is Saturn's last visit in Pisces. He'll only be in Pisces now until about Valentine's Day 2026. So there's some final integrative piece that Saturn is working on in that 12th house. And I think when we have a profound 12th house transit, it makes me think about what has been acknowledged that was not previously said, or what has been seen that was previously ignored, or just what has been realized that you didn't realize before. I think this is why a lot of therapists tend to have some heavy 12th house placements. They're good at helping their clients see what is unseen, right? So I think there's something, especially pertaining to the identity, Aries rising, that you've been marinating with, and something you've been admitting to yourself, something you've been integrating, a truth about maybe a partnership. This is tying in now Mars and Scorpio in the 8th house. Maybe there's some kind of codependency, or there's some level of separation that needs to be had within a partnership in order for both people to move forward on their path. This isn't to say that there's definitely a breakup or a divorce or something like that, but I think there's some level of separation that's happening, so you can come back to maybe what it is that your soul really needs to focus on in this moment. I also think that with Jupiter sitting in the 4th house, adding some support from your environment, from your family. Sometimes we can even get support through recognizing what family really means to us. And even this idea of chosen family comes to mind with the Aries risings, like who has been there for you to support you as you get to know yourself more deeply, as you admit certain things to yourself, or realize, I've been self-sabotaging in this way, or this pattern has really had a chokehold on me for a while, and I'm really trying hard to pivot. Who has created or offered that family support for you? And maybe hanging out in those places, hanging out in those places this month, I think, will be where that support comes through. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking with, especially with Saturn finishing up some lesson in that 12th house.
Sorry, I was muted there. Yeah, one thing that I'll add for as we go through is the reminder of the Purushartas that I've been teaching in my masterclass series. These are the moksha houses, a profound opportunity for the liberation of patterns that are ready to be let go of. And these moksha houses, the word literally means liberation. So I would think of some emotional catharsis that allows us to release things that are ready to be released. I know that may sound vague, but that's as simple as it can be with those moksha houses. Just time to process something emotionally and let go of it. I loved that, Mal. That was such a nice horoscope for Aries, starting us off here. Let's move this around to Taurus. Emily's got Earth signs today, and I am going to outline for you. If you're Taurus rising, I'm going to be listening attentively for this one since it's mine. We've got these in the comma houses, which are often social and relational. But here they are, houses 11, 7, and 3.
Yes, the comma houses. So in keeping with my kind of earlier stage set that I outlined, I'm thinking of the place where we perhaps are feeling some unfulfilled longing, some sense of disappointment, is that Saturn and Neptune in Pisces in the 11th house, the house of groups and communities and friends. And so I'm wondering if for the last couple of years, as Mal said, Saturn has been there since March of 2023, if there hasn't been some longing that our communities might be able to fulfill some connection, this is Pisces, to a greater universal spiritual or artistic connection to that kind of agape love that we are longing for, and we are wanting for that in our communities, in our groups that we associate with, and that has been falling short perhaps for us, or we're feeling a sense of disappointment around that. And then I wonder if, with Mars and Mercury in Scorpio, in the 7th house of our primary relationships, you don't have an argument with your partner, or a kind of sharp-tongued email exchange with a close friend or, primary relationship in your life, or you witness something like this going on for your partner, that they are in the midst of some kind of communication exchange that feels maybe conflictual or argumentative. And this brings up an awareness of communication patterns. I feel like this has already been said, or perhaps roles, old roles that you have fallen into as how you communicate. Maybe in your family, this is that Jupiter in Cancer, the nostalgic memory piece, right? Maybe in your family, you have always been the mediator or the instigator, or the, this is Taurus. Maybe you're the one that everyone can rely upon to be stable and calm in a situation. And for whatever reason, whatever is coming up in that 7th house with Mars and Mercury, it's bringing to light some awareness around old patterns of communication and roles that you have played that maybe are time to be let go and released. And that's when we lean into that Jupiter in Cancer in the 3rd house of communication, of the primary beginner's mind, right? And maybe Jupiter can say, okay, those roles that you have played have helped you. They have helped you for a long time, and we can thank them, and we can say, okay, but maybe now it's time to kind of emotionally mature and find new ways of connecting and communicating with people. And once that starts to happen, then the flow can happen between all 3 of these comma houses, and we can start to look at the ways that our communities perhaps have been falling short or disappointing us, but maybe that's because we've been approaching them from an old role that no longer fits us, that we are ready to grow outside of. And that's, so with all of the Earth risings, right, there's this sense of when the flow starts happening, all of our social relationships can begin to heal and start to have a maturity around them in an emotional sense that might be overwhelming, might be tender, but I think has some really beautiful possibilities for our Taurus risings, in particular that new way of communicating. I think dropping old patterns of communication.
I love this. This is great. For me, I just felt like I got my own little reading. I appreciate that.
No pressure.
Yeah, no, it was one thing that comes to my mind as you were talking through the Grand Water Trine. There's just that there's an opportunity for Tauruses, really all the Earth signs, but the Tauruses to create there's emotional feedback that's ready to be received. It's like the world has a way of reflecting things back to us in the ways that people around us are dealing with or processing emotions in relation to who we are. Mm-hmm. So, for example, when people get mad at you, or when people praise you, or when people show an interest or don't show an interest, all of these things can be really valuable forms of feedback. And it feels to me almost like your Tauruses are ready to receive a powerful form of feedback from the world that could help you in redefining what kind of people and what kind of feedback, what kind of emotional interactions, responses, connections do you want with other people, and which ones don't you want? Okay. That was interesting for me to consider here. I was like thinking through my own life and being like, wow. Okay. Let's go on to Geminis. Q's got air. I'm going to connect this. We've got the Arcta houses 10, 2, and 6 with the Grand Water Trine. Take us away, Q. What do you think?
Oh, yes. So Gemini risings overall for the air signs, this will be falling in your Arcta houses. So like definitely dealing with tangible resources, valuables, your wealth, your sustainability, your health, all the things that kind of pour into your capability to show up and maintain a lifestyle that is financially, but also soul aligned and supportive for your journey. So we're looking, like Adam said, at the 10th, the 2nd, and the 6th house for Gemini risings. I was really looking, because my partner's a Gemini, workaholic, and going through a lot of like financial career changes as we exit out of this year. So it was really interesting to see how that 10th house is being lit up. It is Piscean, so there's a lot of like creative, soul-driven alignment for your purpose and how you show up in a very public role. But that 6th house with Mercury and Mars with the moon there, this is giving very, to me, like a disruption, a very like clear, stark reality check on the physical effect that your dedication to the work that you have done, have been doing, intend to do, how it affects you on a very tangible physical level. And it will have you reconsider what habits, what rituals, what ways in which you are delegating your health. It's really that tap in of like, okay, how much of myself am I willing to serve? This is the house of sacrifice, of work that does not end to a degree. So how do Geminis find a way that they are realigning their soul purpose, that 10th house, that very Piscean energy of like the spiritual guide, right? Spiritual father, mother, however you kind of want to understand that house energetically to be how you show up in your mastership of like all your lived experience and skill set that you've gained. Is that really pouring physically into you? Is that aligned with the routines around your health and the boundaries in which you have set up for yourself in that 6th house? Does that actually align together. And that second house with Jupiter being like in Cancer exalted, it really is giving you like a self knowing. So tapping into that Jupiter Cancer energy of what genuinely supports my vitality, that first house. So you have the second and the sixth house really coming into conversation with each other as far as like, okay, something's happening that is not working for you. You have to change something. Something's making you uncomfortable, or you're realizing that it's rotting from the inside out and it needs to be severed from the way that you move forward and how you serve society, but also how you're serving yourself. Gemini, there's a lot of conversation around here because Mercury is your chart ruler, is in the sign of Scorpio. So you're digging deep. You're really wanting to reassess if you're happy, if you are feeling fulfilled, comfortable, satisfied, and the product that you see before you, whether that be, again, a tangible project, relationships that you're in. But because, again, these are the Arta houses, I do see this being more of a spiritual realignment in your career, in your finances, and in your body, because you need your body, your vessel, to show up for the work that needs to be done. So if Mercury and Mars and the moon there is communicating something on a very physical level, but because, again, Mercury's at play here, so mentally it's going to physically and emotionally and mentally rock you into a reset, I feel like. But again, Jupiter is going to give you that self-confidence to return home to self in order to do the things that you need to do. So I was really, for Gemini specifically, excited to see, like, as these opportunities come up for you to stand in your truth and show up as a spiritual guide for the collective, you need to do that first for the self, by listening to your intuition, listening to the actual physical needs of the body, and then teaching others through that experience and you going through it, how to also do that for themselves. So specifically for Geminis, that's kind of how I'm seeing the energy break down. Very, very exciting time, but some harsh realities around career, work life, and what your needs are, and standing firm in that, I believe, will be their lesson going through this Grand Trine for sure.
Excuse me. I think one of the things that we can think about broadly for the Arta houses with water is that Arta is kind of like Earth in the sense that it's very material, and a lot of the most structured things come through the Arta houses, the things that are firmest, most habitual, most solid and structured and material. Water can be very fertile for growing things materially, like a garden, like receiving rainfall. And it can also flood a garden. And so on the one hand, I think of creative, fertile energy allowing for a transformation of resources and structures. But on the other hand, I think of the potential for structures, habits, things that are supposed to be sort of solid materially, at least temporarily, getting a little overwhelmed or flooded, and then having to let the water sink down into the soil, let the sun come out, let things firm up, and then rebuild or wait a minute until things are solid again. But either way, the water here to me suggests real waves of change coming in materially for the air signs. Okay, let me move this along to Cancer. Kelsey's got water signs, and excuse me, I'm just barely hanging in there with my throat right now. We've got the Grand Water Trine in houses 1, 5, and 9. These are the Dharma houses. What do you think here, Kelsey?
Well, I'll start with Jupiter, just because Jupiter in the first house has brought you a lot to think about, ruling your 9th and your 6th. I'm thinking about, the obvious healing, abundance, but sometimes Jupiter brings reasons to heal. It blows things up so that you can decide, oh, I need to heal this. And I'm thinking about, well, really for everyone, but for my water signs that I have today, we've got the reactions to stress. We have fight, we've got flight, we've got freeze, which I think maybe Cancerians could have been in a freeze for a little bit, with Jupiter in the 12th and Saturn in the 9th, feeling a little disillusionment there. We also got the fawn, and then I'm offering flow for this water trine. Let's flow. I think that Jupiter ruling the 6th has brought you a lot of responsibilities to handle, and they've been maybe at the expense of your hope and optimism, because it can be tough when you're a Sensi water sign and you've got a lot going on, a lot on your plate. And I'm thinking about how, Mars, Mercury, the moon, the rest of the Scorpio stuff coming in later on this year. It's time to redefine what feels like fun. And maybe you are working out. Mars is great in the 5th house for enjoying a nice sweat. My best friend and personal trainer has Mars in the 5th, and I always think about that. So maybe this is a time where you're focusing on your health with Jupiter in the 1st, and maybe that eclipse in Virgo helped you like realize some habits and patterns that you want to change. But also we can go with the creativity route, which I love for you guys. Maybe there's something that's come of these experiences that are inspiring you to create, to heal your inner child and have more fun. Maybe there are people that you're connecting with that are helping you redefine what fun looks like to you. I'm also thinking about just teachers that have come into your life, whether they are in the form of an actual teacher, guru, advisor, someone that's helping you, or a friend, or maybe an astrologer, someone that is helping you through this Saturn Neptune vibe. And, maybe it's been a little more challenging over the 2 years, but maybe perhaps now there's some sort of gem of wisdom that you're receiving with the Grand Water Trine. Also, I'm thinking about how we had Mars reborn through the heart of the sun late 2023. I think it was November. And how are we doing now with that? Because Mars is back, and Mars went through a whole lot to get here, and it was in your sign for a while. I live with Mars retrograde in Cancer, so my heart goes out to you guys. I understand, and it's actually a superpower, I promise. What happened during that time, it changed you forever, because there's something here now where Jupiter's, crossing those same degrees in your 1st house. Mars is really strong again, and it's forming this trine and maybe rewarding you for the things that you endured, or the challenges, or perhaps even just, internal healing that maybe the outside world didn't even see because Jupiter was in your 12th. So I'm thinking about redefining who you are, your self-expression. The 5th house with a lot of stuff in there. It's okay to express yourself again, and maybe that darker, secluded side that most people maybe don't assume about a Cancerian. Maybe there's something that you can share. I'm thinking about writing projects with the Virgo 3rd house eclipse that you had and the 9th house. Maybe you want to share more and be a teacher yourself. And just a reminder, the trine between Saturn and Jupiter, it does perfect in the fire signs. So, that will be between your 10th and 2nd. So maybe you're preparing for something. And yeah, I think that's what I got for you guys.
Excellent. Because these are Dharma houses, one of the ways that I'm thinking about this is in terms of our understanding of what is real and what is true. The 9th house helps us understand what is true in the biggest ways, like scripture traditions from India, or dharmic teachings from your guru about the nature of reality, or a really good education and philosophy at a great university. You know, it's like these big ninth house things usually have to do with what is the dharma of reality itself. And the first and the fifth, that reality is more about its filtering down to the level of our individual identity. Like, what is the truth of who I am? Which is partly about who I am in this lifetime, and then partly who I am beyond this lifetime. So there's a lot coming together right now for the water signs when it comes to our emotions and what truth they provide or what truth they keep us from. Having a subjective center of gravity is not a sin. You know, like the rational mind will tell us that it is. Scientists will tell us that it's not real, that it can't be measured. But our emotions inform us of what's real at a very deep level. And sometimes they can cloud us and keep us stuck in fantasies and delusions. So the water signs, it's like getting a real course in reality and truth through the emotions. And you can see how it can kind of go in either direction. That was good. Let's go to, we're back to Mal for Leo. And so we're back to the spooky houses. 12, 8, and 4 again. And as we go through it, all of the houses, the trigonal houses are all going to be the same, but the order will be flipped. So there will be some nuances, but you'll hear some things repeating for the signs of the same element, because we've got all 3 signs of the same element showing up in our forecast.
Yeah, this is a really interesting just layout to do as the horoscoper, like thinking about, okay, how do we switch up these 3 houses and the different patterns? For Leo risings, like Adam said, we have the moksha houses being highlighted again, only in a slightly different way. And I'm thinking about Jupiter specifically in the 12th house. And this can be a really like probing transit, especially when it comes to our relationship to overcoming fears or taking risks. And I'm even thinking about, what's the Leo rising stereotype? Like someone being on stage. Well, if someone has ever, quote unquote, pushed you on stage before you're ready to like really be seen like that, it's actually a little bit traumatizing, or it's uncomfortable. I even think about my own self. I'm a pretty good public speaker, and I don't tend to get too nervous with like lectures or teaching, etc., etc. But I will say I really hate karaoke. And if someone tries to like push me on stage with karaoke stuff, I'm like, literally get out of my face. Like, don't try to push me. Like, and I think there's something like that kind of going on with the Leo risings. It's a little bit like, I know it's time to expand past this fear story, but don't push me. And, 4th house with Mars and Scorpio there, something's irritating about the new environment. I'm thinking about a Leo rising I know who actually moved across the country after spending 10 years making their home in Chicago. And then they're completely in a new environment. It's not to say they don't like their new environment, but there's certainly some like points of irritation with the new environment, and how that new environment, again, is constantly reminding them of certain things that are maybe on the table to be overcome. I will say in my own life, when I have overcome a fear, it's probably because I actually gave myself permission not to overcome it. Like I kind of reversed psychology myself and just said, okay, fine. Like then just stay in your apartment then. Like that's fine. And if you do that for a couple weeks, you get sick of yourself and you're like, all right, fine. Now I'm ready. Now I'm ready to overcome this. So I think it's a good reminder, this particular combination, not to push yourself before you're ready. But I think there also is something about this trine that is saying, okay, it's time now. Like, I've sat with this fear long enough, and now I can kind of move forward. So I'm excited for the Leo risings, for them to get on stage in maybe a slightly new way.
Excellent. Sorry, can you guys hear me again? Okay. Yeah, again with the moksha houses, I think for Leos in particular, the stage is set for our sense of what makes us important as individuals. And I'm thinking of this for myself because my ascendant ruler is in Leo. So there's an opportunity when we have moksha houses activated like this, and you're like a Leo rising, to refine what it means to be special or important in the world. An emotional process that leads to a refinement of identity and ego is what comes to my mind. How can you take yourself more seriously? How can you feel like your role is sacred, special, important? Those are all really important things for Leo, but not if they aren't being informed by a depth of emotional security and intelligence, right? And so this is maybe an opportunity for more of that. Okay, I'm going to move us along to Emily, who's got the earth signs here, and we are back in the comma houses again. And I'm just going to actually back up the clock by 1 day here to get the moon back in Scorpio. Okay, there we go.
Yeah. So I'm thinking for our Virgos, those couples that maybe you're part of this, maybe this is like your relationship, but who expect their partner to be all things for each other, right? Like, I expect my partner to be my lover, my friend, my co-parent, my domestic roommate, laborer, my therapist, perhaps, maybe even my creative or work partner. Like, this Pisces in the 7th house feels like it might be representative of a relationship like this. Either you yourself expect your partner to be everything, or maybe a little more likely with Virgo risings, your partner expects you to be everything. And there might be this word that has been used already today, some codependency there, where you might feel it's so nice to be needed for all things, right? And so I feel like the Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces in the 7th right now, there might be some of this sense of that disappointment, that unfulfilled longing, in that my partner cannot be all things, or I cannot be all things to my partner. And if you're not in a relationship, it doesn't have to be a romantic partner. This could be any of those primary relationships that we talk about. And then, you're out of town, your partner gets a flat tire. I'm thinking Mars, Mercury in the 3rd house of short distance travel, right? Your partner gets a flat tire or gets into a little fender bender. You're not able to step in and like call AAA for them because you're out of town or you're in a meeting or something like that, and they fall apart. And it brings an awareness to you of this way of relating to each other, expecting the other to be all things and to come in and swoop in and fix everything. Or maybe you go to a neighbor's house for dinner and you're seeing this dynamic in your neighbor's relationship or something like that. And it brings an awareness, or you're listening to a podcast that's talking about this, the 3rd house things, right? Communication. That brings an awareness of this perhaps codependency or these expectations that we can be all things to each other. And then that's when we lean into the Jupiter in Cancer in the 11th house. And Jupiter says, hey, your partner doesn't have to be everything to you. You have friends, you have communities, you have ways that you can interact with other groups that might help fulfill some of those roles that you or your partner are expecting to be solely placed at your feet. So I'm kind of feeling like this has an opportunity, again, for all of those interpersonal relationships, ways we communicate with people, ways we relate and compare ourselves to people. These are all kind of comma house, pursuing our desires, particularly in our relationships. That this is offering, flow, as Kelsey said, in a taking some of the pressure off our significant relationships to be all things, and that there is some abundance or healing opportunity if we lean into our community relationships, our friends, or even if we lean into our most deeply held dreams for the future. That's another 11th house topic, right? That I can lean into what my future might look like, what I'm dreaming for that, and take some of that pressure off of expecting my one primary relationship to fulfill all things. It's kind of what I'm thinking about for our Virgos out there.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm thinking a lot about my daughter. I always do when Virgo rising comes up, my older daughter who's in 4th grade. And a lot of what's been taking place ever since Jupiter entered Cancer is really a nice refinement for her about what kinds of social dynamics are positive and which aren't. I wouldn't be surprised to see further refinement of what makes you feel happy and connected to other people and what doesn't. Just like super simple. I'm watching her go through that in 4th grade right now, and I'm so proud of her for what she's observing and noticing as superficial versus substantive, and a lot of that. It's like, I don't remember who I heard say this, but someone recently I heard say, Stephen King. He was saying that the American schools are like this very brutal social caste system that still exists. And I was like, oh my God, that's true. Yeah, I'm watching her figure some of those things out through her emotional intelligence. And I'm as a dad, I'm really proud of her right now. So I could imagine that continuing for her and maybe becoming even more acute in some ways over the next couple of months with these Grand Water Trines.
My older daughter is a Virgo sun, and all the social, and she's in 5th grade. All of that social dynamics is really, really coming up right now. I could go on, but I won't.
Yeah, no, that's totally.
But yes, it's very prevalent in my family life right now.
Yeah. We've got Libra rising next. Okay, sorry guys. My brain is a space cadet today because I'm not feeling super well. So we've got the Grand Water Trine again in the Artha houses 2, 6, and 10 with Libra rising.
Yes. So for Libra risings, like Adam stated with Gemini risings, the Artha houses do also have this element of like, okay, with the water flooding in and there being a lot of just change and shift happening, there's a lot of emotion here. And what I've been finding with the Libra risings that I've worked with in my life, there are a lot of shifts happening career-wise. Your 10th house having that Jupiter in Cancer is really blessing this house with a lot of like fertile energy and possibilities for change that is either aligned with what your desires were, what your hopes and aspirations were, or opportunity, fertility for change that shifts and recalibrates you in a way that is more soul aligned and nurturing and comforting for the placement that you have in that 10th house. So as Jupiter continues to make its way through that house, I've seen a lot of the Libras around me have drastic changes in whether like their mindset around what it is they want to do or be known for. I've had a Libra rising recently tell me that like they shifted from being like, well, I just want to have a life that's sustained by being who I am. I don't want to work. I don't want to clock in for a 9 to 5. I simply just want to be the aesthetic baddie that I am and have a life that is like fueled by that alone. And like, yes, for some people that sounds wildly insane, lazy even, or just like audacious. But how many people are actually living their lives just showing up as who they are? And it is aesthetically like pleasing to somebody. It is harmonious to the lifestyle that they're living. They do want to be in relationship and they're attracted to those people who are just like showing up as themselves. So recently I've had that same Libra come to me and say, actually, this is the creative like work I want to do. I want to like help people heal through their inner child wounds. I want to take them to the depths of death and rebirth, those realms, and really help guide them through that and be a nurturer to them and like almost basically step into that mothering energy and identity as like, come into the womb with me. I dwell within the womb. I will teach you the ways of the womb and you will be rebirthed through that process. They're totally leaning into that now. And you're seeing other things in their life kind of shift and meet them where they're at. At the same time, I think it's really important to highlight that second house. For Libras, self-worth with Scorpio being in that second house is going to be quite important. I've had a lot of Libras come and speak upon the conversations that they're having with self or the realities that the outside world, these ARTA houses, are bringing to them, whether they've been laid off and now they're coming to themselves and being like, well, why was I laid off? Why didn't I get the opportunity that I felt very deserving of? What are my systems of belief, my practices, my rituals, my understanding, my deep feelings around my value, my self-worth, and what I bring to the table? And how much am I willing to keep harmony intact over my power? Like, how much am I willing to pay for harmony with my power being subjugated to whatever anybody else around me or whatever position I find myself in, kind of taking control over that for me in the sake of just keeping things pleasant or copacetic. A lot of Libras, I think, with this Grand Trine, with Mercury, the Moon, and Mars being in that house, will activate some conversations around that and some understandings. I think Adam did a great job saying how we can be misguided by our emotions, but they're still valid. I think that this is going to be a super vital practice for Libras to lean into, validating their experiences and emotions that they are experiencing and the information that they're receiving from that, but not leaning into over validation where you're not wanting to change, you're not wanting to transform, you're not wanting to evolve and allow the death to happen and new understanding to take form. For Libras, I think that just will be a really pivotal shift in their understanding and perspective of self, and then in turn, how they are able to show up in that 10th house energy as the nurturer, as the like universal grieving mother or grieving container that can share that grieving with the world around us, because we are. A lot of people are experiencing that, and that can be very tough if you are not grounded in the value and the worth that you bring to a situation, Libra. So I think that those are conversations that will definitely be happening with the 6th house at play here. Once you're able to know your self-worth, that's going to align perfectly with that 6th house. How you show up physically in your body, fully capable with your spiritual, soul-driven wanting or desires in that Piscean house is going to feel expansive. It's going to be a little dreamy in how you set up your spiritual rituals day to day, your daily rituals around your health, your body, the work that you do to serve others. I think that there's been confusion there, but there's going to be more understanding as Saturn and Neptune return back to that house to solidify what has been quite porous or illusionary for you. So I think that for Libras, I don't want to be like, oh, get your self-worth up. I want you to really sit with this energy and validate your self-worth that you're bringing, but also be okay with like transforming that to strengthen it, rebuild it in something that really sustains yourself, but the communities that you're obviously a part of as well.
Thank you. Okay, moving along. I'm going to try to preserve my throat a little bit now. Let's go to Kelsey for water signs, and we're back to the Dharma houses 1, 5, and 9.
My Scorpios. I was so excited that I had the water signs this month. Scorpios, how do you take up space in your life? How do you get in the driver's seat and steer the steering wheel of your chart? When Mars comes back into your first house, you might get a little bit of a remembering of late 2023 when Mars was reborn in their first house. And I encourage you to track that cycle because, Mars retrograde in your ninth, not only was Mars retrograde, but it was in a sign it didn't really feel as supported to be Mars in. And yeah, as I said, I know that very well. I have this in my chart. And Mal, I get a little nervous speaking, but if you put me on that karaoke stage, I will give all y'all a show. So this is about finding the thing that makes you feel like you can express yourself. I feel like with Saturn and Neptune in your fifth, um, Neptune in the fifth was a long transit of dreams and creative impulses. And when Saturn came in, it was like, okay, make it real. Can you do it if it's tough? And I think that what it brought you could be some sense of purpose that, the time you spend perfecting your art, perfecting your creative expression, or finding the things that bring you joy, or having boundaries. That's a big one. These things actually help you be more creative and express yourself more authentically, which is what a Scorpio wants to do. We have Leo in the 10th. So this is a transit that you're preparing for with, Jupiter is going to go in Leo next year. So I'm thinking about how Mars and Mercury in your first can help you really fine tune your vision. With a strong Mars in Scorpio, it's still a water sign. No hate on Mars in Aries, but it can be a little impulsive. And with Mars in Scorpio, we can be a little more focused and clear about what it is that our intention is, because it is rooted in emotional intelligence. So make sure that, your emotions are resonant with you. So take the water trine. If you're feeling stuff, feel through it, because then you will crystallize your vision and you can really avoid stinging yourself. If you think of a scorpion, you don't want to sting yourself. Done that a couple times in my life. And I'm thinking about the last time Mars and Mercury came together. I think it was right before Halloween. It was real spooky for me. And I had a lot of challenges that I was facing. And what I learned that time was I need to be clear and direct. I don't want to be harsh. I want to be clear and direct about, how I'm feeling. And so maybe think back to that time. Maybe think back to, the great conjunction of Jupiter Saturn at the end of 2020 and what you promised to yourself. That happened at the base of your chart. What's coming out of that? Who are you becoming? And with Jupiter in your ninth, it's bringing you purpose. You're feeling connected, whether it's to God, the universe, to your grandmother, to a creative project, to your self-confidence and uh, sense of wonder in the world. With these water trines, we're yearning to believe. So believe in yourself. This is a tough time, no matter what you believe. So I'm hoping that this water trine can help us all create systems and boundaries so that we feel safe to still express ourselves and to still be true and authentic. I think that with Saturn in the fifth, we have this creative passion, and there's some essence of like Jupiter in the ninth giving you permission to do it. You never needed the permission, but you may have needed the time. And I think that's what I like to think about astrology, is that it's the timing. It's not that you did it too late or too soon or whatever. It's no, this is reflecting what you were already going to do. It's not really predicting anything. That's my favorite thing to say to a skeptic, by the way. And I think that this Grand Water Trine is just bringing you back home to who you are after having some 12th house transits with Mars and Mercury. There may have been some anxiety about this moment, but as you arrive there, you're not going to be scared. You're going to feel like yourself.
Nice. Okay. Let's move on to fire again. This is our last spooky house trio. We've got Mal's going to take us through Sagittarius here with the 4th, 8th, and 12th activated again for the fire signs.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you actually kind of brought up, Kelsey, maybe some differences between Mars in Aries and Mars in Scorpio, because, these two domiciles are interesting to think about and compare and contrast. And one time I was actually hiking with a Sagittarius rising. We were in Yosemite, and I asked her, I was like, should we be bringing bear spray? Like, do we have to worry about bears? And she was like, we should be okay. But what you really have to worry about are the mountain lions, because the mountain lions will like stalk you for like 2 hours and then you won't even know it. And then they just get you at the end. And I was and when she said that, I was like, you know what? The astrologer brain in me, I went to Scorpio, and we could even take that further and go Mars and Scorpio. Like, there's something kind of the animal spirit of the mountain lion feels kind of connected to Mars and Scorpio, something that's kind of strategic. You can't quite sense it, and very plugged in to, again, the unseen, what is not being acknowledged, etc., etc. So bringing that to Sagittarius rising and this Mars transit going through the 12th house, again, what is unseen, what has been unacknowledged, what are those maybe hidden enemies within our own selves, that we don't always call out or we try to ignore. I think there's something about really clarifying what those are. And instead of letting those things undermine us, bringing them to the surface and really having a battle with those parts of us in a good way. I think something that's been coming up for me listening to everybody talk is the Grand Trine might help us face some fear of conflict, especially with this Mars in Scorpio. So I see the Sag risings maybe playing with this idea that, maybe there's inner conflict or maybe it's coming up more externally. But either way, it's good to bring that to the surface and face it. Now, I know let's go to the 4th house with Saturn sitting there. Saturn's been there since 2023. I know a Sag rising who has recently lost a parent. I know a Sag rising who became a parent during this transit. And I know a Sag rising who moved very far away from their parents. So I don't want to underemphasize how important our relationship to our parents or our role as a parent could be at this time. Even if the Sag risings do not have kids, like biological kids, I'm thinking about the parts of ourselves, our inner child, how we parent ourselves is directly related then going back to the 12th house in Scorpio, how we're facing conflict, how willing we are to put ourselves in situations where we're able to tell someone like, hey, that hurt, can we talk about it? I just see there's something cathartic going on with how the Sag risings are communicating. Lastly, I'll mention that the 8th house containing that Jupiter transit right now, I've noticed when a benefic transits the 8th house, I really like the word forgiveness. And I don't remember who it was. I was listening to someone talk about forgiveness and how forgiveness is almost a neutralizing of emotion. You know you've forgiven this person or yourself when you don't feel such heightened rage or anger or regret or shame towards the situation. And how do you neutralize emotions? Well, you release them, which could just be the title of the Grand Trine in general. How do we neutralize emotions? So I wouldn't be surprised if some Sag risings were having some profound moments of forgiveness, especially with parents. Whether it's a parent who is living or dead, I think there's still opportunity for release in that area. And then also, of course, forgiveness of ourselves, which is more of a 12th house, 8th house thing. That's what I got for you, Sag risings.
Love that.
Thank you, Mal. I'm writing that down in my head. That's for me. Yeah.
We're going. Emily's next, and we're going to Capricorn, which gets us back into these comma houses 11, 7, and 3.
So I have this image. I don't know if it's a sacred image, if it would qualify as that, but what I keep thinking of for Cap risings here, I keep thinking of someone who's maybe a little straight-laced and buttoned up, standing on the threshold of the community center basement, about to enter their first community choir practice. I don't know. I just have this, like, they're about to walk through the door and take join a community choir. And I think it speaks to that 3rd house with Pisces there and Saturn and Neptune there. I'm wondering if for some of our Capricorns out there hasn't been a sense of longing to connect with our local communities, longing to connect with our own sense of maybe artistic, spiritual expression through something like singing in a choir, taking a creative writing class, starting that podcast, even starting a journaling practice, something like that there has been a longing for a connection in this way. And yet, maybe for some Capricorns, they're like, well, I can't join just the local community choir. I want to know that I'm good enough to sing at Carnegie Hall, or I don't, so I'm not going to even try, right? Or I can't just start a journaling practice. It has to be that I'm going to write an 1,000-page memoir of my life, or why bother? There might be something here that there's a longing or a desire to connect artistically, spiritually, creatively with our sense of self-expression or with our local environment, but we've been holding ourselves back maybe because the image of it can't be fully realized in reality, right? And then I'm thinking about Mars and Mercury and Scorpio in the 11th house. You see someone on social media who you follow just unabashedly singing, and you go, maybe I should just join that choir, right? Or a coworker says, hey, I signed up for a creative writing class. Do you want to come with me? Or a friend says, would you stop saying you want to do this thing? Just go do it. Something about that 11th house, there's some activation within your community, your coworkers, your professional networks, your friends, that allows you to realize, okay, maybe I can enter into this expressive way that I've been longing to do, but have been holding myself back because I want to take it too seriously, that kind of thing. And then there's Jupiter in Cancer in the 7th house. Maybe your partner, if you have a partner, says, hey, I can be with the kids one night a week so you can go take that class. Go for it. You know, maybe you don't have a partner and you don't want one because that, you know, you can do it all yourself. You can fulfill yourself totally emotionally without other people. I don't know. And something about starting to express yourself in this way softens a way of relating to and looking for relationship. Or maybe you have been wanting a partnership, but you have an idea that the partner needs to bring all of the emotional softness, or you need to be responsible for all of it. And again, there's a softening here, a flow here between all of these interpersonal houses, the comma houses. When you just enter in some way, you soften in some way to your creative expression in the 3rd house, in whatever way that is, that then there can be a softening, a healing, a forgiving around how you relate to your one-on-one dynamics, how you are in your communities. Again, all of these, the earth signs, this fall, you know, we're having those wave after wave of these houses being activated, and there's a real opportunity for healing, softening, and tenderness, and rewriting the script of how we interact with and communicate with the other people in our lives. And I think that, you know, just like a bruise has to kind of get yellow and green before it heals all the way, or just like a scab has to kind of like get a little itchy and uncomfortable while it's healing. Like this fall might be a little uncomfortable, a little tender. We might be having those bruises, you know, in our relationships, kind of needing to go through the yellow and green period of time. But hopefully, ultimately, on the other side of it, then, you know, and then we get that pile up of planets in January in your 1st house, that we've had a chance to kind of rework and heal and soften and rewrite the script for our interpersonal relationships and dynamics this fall.
So nice. Thank you. All right, we're moving to Aquarius, and we've got the watery trigon here in the Arctic houses again, 10, 6, and 2. What do you think, Q?
Yeah, for Aquariuses, I am curious and like really interested to see what like truths are crystallizing emotionally, mentally, physically for you as it revolves around that 10th house with Scorpio, at that pentacle of like visibility in your chart. There could be some things that are deeply felt and have been deeply felt from you, but now you're getting the mental clarity and it's aligning with your emotional intelligence, like Kelsey said, and capability to actually take action, to speak up, to relate to or express to the community, the group of people you're working with or working for, that things aren't as they seem, or that you, like I said, have some truths that you need to share that could be not well received, or could feel like a severance from the work that you are known to do or what people have assumed and projected onto you, as that's the house where like other people's ideas, understandings of who you are can be projected back. And so you could be an emotional mirror potentially to things that people aren't really wanting to receive or understand at the moment, and what you say or bring to light could be quite jarring, but it will realign you to ritual that is authentic to who you are. And Aquarius is, I'm sure that won't be anything really new to you as far as bringing a sense of innovativeness or like novelty to topics, subjects, programs, systems of working, but it will be felt just a bit more powerfully during this grand trine is what I'm thinking. Whatever it is that you're bringing to the forefront for people to digest, or that has been brought to the forefront for you to digest as a new truth, a possibility of truth, it will be a collective benefit. It won't be just like an individual experience. With so much of Aquarius energy, it usually has to do with the larger collective, and how you show up as, like I said, an innovator, a guide, the scientist, the person who is creating new regulations even of how we work. So you have Pisces in that second house for you specifically, that will be you restructuring with Saturn and Neptune there, how you share this information, how you connect and bleed out this information in a way that supports you financially, but also builds a new spiritual sense of like knowing, sustainability, and I'm thinking of a triple Aquarius who is an astrologer who has been getting some notoriety and some virality, like he's going viral for bringing forth his understanding of Pluto being the ruler, or just like the energetic archetype of not only divorce but marriage as well. And it's been shocking and like shaking people to be like, Venus isn't the ruler of your relationships or your love life, is actually Pluto. And he's just been getting a lot of slack for it, but also a lot of admiration. A lot of people, it resonates deeply, this way in which he's expressing how you love, how you move in your relationships, how catastrophically challenging love relationships can be, and that is attributed to Pluto. Regardless of if you agree with it or not, he is speaking a truth that is resounding to him and many others, but it is definitely severing off his ties, his community, the way people perceive him in a certain type of degree, but he does not care. He has this very soul-driven philosophy, understanding, and desire to teach other people how to love in what he feels like is this profoundly new way, that agape love, that the Pisces second house, that he most likely identifies with as part of his like sense of vitality of self, how he chooses to move in the world. He wants to share that with the rest of the world. Very sixth house Cancer as well, where you're like, spiritually, I have this agape love, compassion, nurturing, mothering that I am capable of sharing with the world. Physically, my vessel needs to meet that. So I'm showing up in these different ways. But that 10th house Scorpio, I may ruffle some feathers. My feathers may be ruffled when I am perceived a certain type of way, and I have to address that. So it's very interesting to me, for Aquarius specifically, how they are moving through sharing the information that they have, the new insights of what their purpose they feel like will be for them, regardless of how it upsets other people. It's a truth that you all will be standing in. Cancer or Jupiter will be supportive, will be comforting when you return back to your routines, whether you're like eating good food that brings you some type of grounding, and capability to show up for these tough conversations, tough challenges on the public forum. It may feel very public, the way in which you are fighting and challenging society, but it will feel worthwhile once you lock in into what your actual spiritual like desires, and the compass, that emotional compass, will be major for this grand trine, after you've worked through all the peaks and flows of it, for sure.
I got married when Pluto was conjunct my Venus, by the way.
See, hey, listen, I'm not saying I'm choosing sides or nothing, but look. So it's very interesting. I love the new thought and conversation that I think Aquariuses will bring to the platform of all that we're experiencing for this. I think that they will have really, really great opportunities to bring people to the table and say, baby, I know, but like, let's try to just like imagine, let's talk about it. Let's just see. We don't have to leave this table agreeing, but like, let's see what similarities are there Yeah, I think that'd be helpful.
Okay, we've got Pisces, last but least, with Kelsey taking the water signs in houses 1,
Last
9, and 5.
last but not least, not least, Emily. So my Pisces, I am thinking about Saturn. What a long time Saturn has been in your first house, and it's back again. And I like to think about retrogrades as, well, why? Why is it coming back? And I think that you're realizing your discipline, the limitations you've been through, the hardships, the challenges, maybe with showing up. I'm thinking about how Saturn rules the 11th, maybe showing up publicly, maybe how that's refined a vision. And maybe with your chart ruler Jupiter moving through Gemini, there was like this or that, this or that. And now Jupiter's in Cancer, and there's this secret third thing of, actually, I'm not even going to decide. I'm just going to feel. I'm just going to feel what I need to do, and I'm just going to do it. And I'm thinking about how the focus discipline of Saturn has now brought you opportunities to grow in your self-expression and to take risks. And I think that now with so much going on in Scorpio, there's this lack of fear to go there and express yourself, to research, teach, share all the ninth house words, but maybe even to, connect with something that, maybe outside of your normal beliefs. I've got Mars in the ninth, and I've heard someone say, maybe it was you, Adam, like shaking your fist at God, like, why, God, why? And this is kind of like a transit where you might be like, I understand why I had to go through some of these Saturnian experiences in my first house. Or maybe there's a passion that's coming through because of the questioning. Questions are good because then we're growing, we're thinking critically. So maybe there's some deep research you're doing. Maybe there's some knowledge and wisdom you're gaining from just questioning your beliefs. Maybe you come back to your same belief. That's fine. Maybe you change your beliefs. Maybe you change the strategy. Or maybe you're going for something like a certification, or maybe you're traveling. Whatever it is, you're going on a journey. And this journey is impacting you personally. It's helping you take more calculated risks that help you feel more free from Saturn's tight ring around you. You're understanding what's possible when you do these things and how good it feels, because your chart ruler is exalted in the fifth. Jupiter in the fifth was my favorite time. I was making music, I was having fun. You don't want to have too much fun, but you want to keep it in a Saturnian place. And that's the great thing about a Saturn trine Jupiter, is that, we're growing, but we're considering the limitations and the bounds of which we can operate within. And the Mars piece is kind of like this activator, as Emily was saying earlier, that, maybe this is how you're feeling the right timing. We're thinking about Mars and Scorpio, where it's strategic in the watery place of like, okay, do I feel ready? When's the right appropriate moment? Maybe a lot of us, every sign, maybe a lot of us are doing things a little behind the scenes. And maybe it doesn't have to be this big thing that we're, having some challenging conversation. Maybe we're thinking about how we're changing mentally, and how those shifts in the mind are impacting how we behave, how we approach things in our life. But yes, I'm pretty familiar with Mars in the ninth, and I really enjoy it because it has me questioning things. And what happens is I arrive to a place that would have never been there if I was just certain. And I think it's really important for all of us during this time to understand that we don't know everything, and that's okay. And together, if we just support one another through these months with these water trines, we're going to feel that Jupiter abundance of support and purpose. Like, what's the point of life aside from, all the things, but relationships, connections, they make our life worth it. I know these aren't really relational houses, but Pisces, you had a Virgo eclipse. So your relationships maybe are inspiring new things. Maybe they're motivating you. And I think of fifth house as also like the people you do the fun things with. And, maybe the 11th more about like the social role that you play. I know Adam says that a lot. So yeah, all of these coming together, you're spiritually ready. You're emotionally ready to go for it. And maybe, there are some things you have to take care of first to really feel that that correct like moment for you. But I'm sure that this trine is going to feel supportive in a way that you've been waiting for. It really doesn't matter what sign. I'm just feeling that this trine is helping us ground back to like an original intention we had during the Jupiter Saturn conjunction late 2020. What did you envision? Saturn meant it's going to take some time and hard work, but we're approaching this opening. So recognize it and believe it, and then you'll see it in some time.
Let me tell you guys how you can connect with our hosts. I'm losing my voice here. Okay, let's see. Go to Kelsey. AstrologyRx.com. Do I have that right?
That's me.
Okay. AstrologyRx.com is where you can find Kelsey, or on Instagram at Metanova Girl.
Yeah.
The Instagram, is there a way? Is it booking through the website alone, or can you book through Instagram as well?
You can find my website link on my Instagram bio, and my homepage has my calendar, but astrologyrx.com is how you can schedule with me directly.
Yeah, right on. Okay, we're going to go to Emily, TATOMER.com. That booking there as well, Emily?
Yep, right there. Right on the homepage, or there's an offerings page, either way, yeah.
Yeah, and then Emily at Emily T Astrology on Instagram.
That's right.
Okay, there we go. We go to, wait a second. Mal. Okay, hold on. At _ Mallory Hasty on Instagram. Is that right?
That's correct. And website is the same, MalloryHasty.com.
Okay, I was going to say I couldn't find for some reason I couldn't find your website on my list here. So it's just it's MalloryHasty.com.
Yeah, that's correct.
And people can book a reading there as well?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, Q, we've got you Instagram at SensualNoiree. Is that how we say it?
Perfect.
And then I want to say, what's your website?
Oh, I have that in the bio for everything.
Oh, it's there. Okay.
Go ahead, follow me.
If you go to the bio on Q's page, you can book a reading with, is that right, Q?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay. Yeah. All right. This was super fun, and I'm going to go sleep now. And I apologize because I'm a mess of a human being at the moment. So I love you guys.
Yeah.
We love you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Hope you feel better. Oh,
Feel
gosh.
better.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you again next month. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. I'm excited to tell you about our upcoming program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. This is our first-year course in Hellenistic astrology, and it begins again this November. In this video, I'm going to tell you about the course, the format of the course, and how to register. So let's go ahead and get into it. What is this course about? Well, if you are not familiar, ancient Hellenistic astrology is the earliest and original form of horoscopic astrology. All of the subsequent forms and schools of astrology that have existed over thousands of years come from these philosophical and theoretical roots. And so what you're doing when you study Hellenistic astrology is you're going back to understand the why behind absolutely everything. Why were there ever such a thing as houses and signs in the first place? How were the planets ever assigned to rule various portions of the zodiac in the first place? How do you use the categories of essential dignity, and why were they ever created in the first place? If you're someone like me, you like to know the why behind things, because once you understand the why, then you know how to use things more intuitively. So really the point of Hellenistic astrology, in my opinion, is not so much about going back and becoming a traditional astrologer or, just being traditional for the sake of being traditional, as much as it is about grasping the roots of the entire system and paradigm. When you understand those roots, you have more intuition and understanding, which allow for you to be much more artful and fluid in the way that you speak the language of astrology. We call this class Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic because while it is about going back to understand the philosophical, theoretical, technical roots of the tradition, it's also about fluidly bridging those things with modern astrology and all of its most unique contributions. For example, modern astrology has given us so much psychological depth and personal depth. And so in a modern astrological setting, you're going to get the ability to explore your own character, your own psychology, and you're going to be able to utilize astrology for a process of healing and personal transformation. But when you pair that with ancient astrology, and it's almost like predictive karmic analytics, you really have a full toolkit to work with. And so that's also a great mission of ours at Nightlight, is to bridge ancient and modern forms, which is why we call the program Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. So that's just a little kind of overview of the program. If you want to know more about the specifics of the curriculum and of the syllabus, what I encourage you to do is go over to nightlightastrology.com, click on the courses page, go to the first year course, scroll down, and you'll see this over 12 months you'll learn about. And here you're going to see more of a detailed breakdown of the curriculum itself. I can promise you that if you've studied astrology in modern context, but you've never gone back to the ancient roots, while some of these topics may look familiar to you and you go, oh, I've already learned about that, unless you've studied them from the Hellenistic perspective, I guarantee that you are not going to be familiar with this content. Hellenistic astrology is mind-blowingly new and interesting for most people. And if you've never studied it, again, don't assume that anything on this list is something you're going to be familiar with. In that way, the program is really ideal for a variety of different people, and I'll say more about that in a second. So what is the format of the course? Let's go to that next. Scroll down and you're going to see that the course includes 30 online webinars that I lead throughout the year. Over the course of a year together, I have 30 classes that are broken into different units of material. In between those classes, we have breakout study sessions with your course director and 2 TAs. They're going to lead you through Q&A sessions and tutoring sessions to make sure that you have a lot of support in between major units of study. In addition, we also have an interactive group forum discussion where you can ask questions year-round and get an answer within a business day in the student forum, where a lot of people also connect and build community. Lots of people in that forum also develop like little meetup groups outside of class. That's very common in all of our programs. It's a very community-loving, warm space where anyone's also welcome. Throughout the course, you're also going to find that for every lesson, if you're just there as a hobby student, you can just listen to the webinars. They're all recorded for you. So if you can't make the live webinars, everything is housed on the website as recordings. I'd say about 40 or 50% of our students are going to be following along at their own pace, whereas the other half might be attending the live webinars. But it's really kind of, if you can attend a few and then 1 week you got to be gone, the recordings are always there. You have lifetime access to everything in the course, so it's not a big deal. For every lesson as well, if you're someone who wants to go really, really deep, maybe you have the intention to practice professionally, this course is set up with an optional certification exam at the end from our school, from our program. So you can, if you want to build that resume and develop the credentials from our programs, you can do that, but it's optional, so you don't have to. And outside of every lesson, we have recommended reading. We have supplemental bonus content, all of which is optional, but it's there for people who might want a lot more, whereas some people will take the webinars themselves, and that'll be plenty. So it's really flexible in that way. Also, this is one program within 4 years of curriculum that are meant to go together. And so most people who come through our first year program will end up taking our second year program, where we develop forecasting and prediction and transit tracking techniques. Our third year program which is aimed at counseling and psychology. So psychological counseling skills is our 3rd-year program. And then the Oracle Within, which is our exploration of the philosophical, spiritual roots of the divinatory oracular tradition of astrology. So there's a lot of material there. We also have another 1-year program in horary astrology for some people who want to add that predictive tool to their toolkit. So there's just a lot of material at Nightlight that this class is actually just one part of, which can be taken standalone, or for some people, they get into it, they're going to love it. You're going to hang out with us for 3 or 4 years worth of content. This program is ideal for a number of different types of students of astrology. I'll say that for starters. So let's see here. I'll stop sharing this. So we have there's a profile of the typical students who come through our courses. One is going to be people who just want a very guided introduction to ancient astrology because you've never had it before. Maybe you're only familiar with modern, and you want that guided, structured approach to learning traditional for the first time. Also, people who are brand new to astrology in general, there's no better place to start than at the roots of the ancient foundations. So whether you're a total beginner or just a beginner to Hellenistic, this is a great place to start. If you are someone who's been around astrology for a long time, but you've never had a guided, structured approach to Hellenistic astrology, again, this is a great place to start. I promise you, Hellenistic is very different than what you're familiar with, and you're going to need a guided and structured approach at some point in time. I also think for people who are looking for a lineage, which means not just a bunch of information, but a practitioner-specific based approach where you get to see a practitioner work with clients. You get to hear how a practitioner has prioritized different techniques and why. You're going to get a structured, spiritually grounded focus at Nightlight as well, where if you're looking for someone who practices astrology but also values grounded, everyday spiritual practice, that's Nightlight. If you want a community that's been in the industry for a long time now, this is our 16th year of teaching programs and guiding students through trainings. So all of those things, if they matter to you, this is a great place to study. It's a warm community atmosphere. It's spiritually grounded. It's focused. It's academically rigorous. It's going to provide you the appropriate preparation for practicing professionally, especially if you go through all of our programs. But also for those who are just curious and love astrology for your own personal interests, this is going to be a great place for you to learn and grow and thrive and feel like you have a lot of support around you in the curriculum, the teachers, the community, as you're developing, what might just be a personal interest or spiritual hobby. So that is who it's ideal for. Finally, how you register. You go over to the website. I'm going to take you back there. And it's at the bottom of the first year page. You're going to find that the early bird rate is in effect until October 24th. You can save significantly off the cost of the course when you use the early bird rate, where you can pay in full, or use an early bird installment rate plan. Both are going to save you off significantly off the cost of the course. But also at Nightlight, it has always been our mission to make sure that astrological education is accessible for everyone. So please, if you are someone who would love to take this course, but maybe you could only afford a small amount of tuition per month, use the tuition assistance. It is there. All you got to do is apply. You fill out the little form. You tell us your situation. If you're on a fixed income, if you're on a limited income, if you're part-time, if you're in between jobs, if you don't make a lot and you're on that fixed budget, we understand. We don't want people to hurt themselves trying to study something that is spiritual that we feel should be very accessible for everybody. So if you're someone who could use a little help to make this program happen, for whatever reason, maybe you're a single parent or you're on disability or you're retired or you're on a fixed income, whatever the case is, use that tuition assistance. Also, people in other countries who have extreme, exchange rates. We get it. So just use the tuition assistance and we'll be glad to make sure that the price point is accessible. For us, as a spiritual topic, we're a business at the end of the day, but we believe that this is a spiritual topic. And so accessibility has been a part of our model for 16 years now. We've never not had one of our training programs with affordable sliding scale-based prices for people who need it. So please take advantage of that. It's all there for you. I hope to see you in classes soon. And if you have any questions about the program whatsoever, direct them to us at info@nightlightastrology.com. And I hope to see you all coming up here in November. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.